Good evening, everyone. I'm Doppler 10 Meteorologist Ross Caruso. We'll get started here with this live update in a few minutes. We'll wait just a couple minutes here to get started before we start to talk about this evening's update with the winter storm and what we're seeing across central Ohio. So we'll wait to get more information on that, but in the meantime, we are still looking at quite a bit of sleet across central Ohio. That is the majority of some of the reports that we have seen. I've seen some ice reports, especially down to the south as well. Looking at reports of some pretty sizable snow up near Cleveland and northeastern Ohio, closer to home in Dayton in western Ohio, looking at 4 inches, seems to be the majority there. But for us here in Columbus, haven't seen any recent snow reports, but we've been getting reports of sleet on the order of 1 to 2 inches. And that is a lot. You know, if that was plain snow, we could easily be looking at, 4 to 6 inches. But the sleet's sticking around, and again, it looks like we will see a gradual changeover as we head into the overnight, but it will take quite some time. And again, we're just getting started with this update here. We'll begin in a matter of moments. Looking at quite a few areas dealing with some significant icing into southern Muskingum County and southeastern Ohio as well. A couple inches of snow reported down towards Cincinnati. But really just some heavy rain, flooding reported down southeast towards Meigs County near the Ohio River line along West Virginia. All righty, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. I am Doppler 10 Meteorologist Ross Caruso. Voice probably sounds familiar because we've been talking about this storm all day long. Ever since this afternoon, I came in, started bringing in some cut-ins during our afternoon programming in between commercials, and here we are again talking about this winter storm, which still present, not moving a whole lot. And 24 hours ago, we were seeing it into the northwestern part of the state, but it was several hundred miles away from us. But things quickly picked up as we went into the day today. But right now, really not looking all that bad as far as the visibility out there here in Columbus. We've been looking at a little more sleet sticking around than snow, although looking at satellite and radar, one would assume that all of this that's showing here in the blue is snow, but a lot of it isn't. And the reason for that is, again, the way that our radar shoots, it goes up at an angle, so a lot of times it doesn't pick up or account for what's underneath it. And much like when we talk about severe weather, when we're looking for rotation in a storm, it's a strong indicator for possibly tornadic activity. It doesn't tell us if there's a tornado, but it gives us a good indicator. Much like that, for the same reason, is we don't know what's happening beneath the radar beam when it's picking up what is actually snow falling from the sky into the upper parts of the cloud. But as it's reaching the surface, there's something going on. And actually looking at one of the soundings from the National Weather Service office in Wilmington, Ohio, we actually had a big section of the, I would say, lower parts to mid parts of the atmosphere, about 4,000 to 9,000 feet, where temperatures were actually close to the freezing mark. And what that does, even though it's not, well above the freezing mark, right around 32 degrees, even just a decimal or two above that, can be enough to partially melt those snowflakes. And then as they fall to the surface, well, there's a ways to fall down from 4,000 feet where air is below freezing. It then refreezes and hits the surface. But it falls much faster because it's more spherical, it's more dense than a snowflake, which doesn't have as much of an aerodynamic fit compared to sleet, which again, essentially is just looking like hail. But that has also allowed for more sleet to fall. We've seen reports anywhere from about 1 to 2 inches, which is a lot for sleet. And that stuff packs a lot easier and tightly together than what we see with the snowflakes. It doesn't stack and, really accumulate like what we would see snow. But it also then packs together and then gets into these frozen chunks. And with temperatures well below the freezing mark over the next handful of days, that's just going to be a giant chunk of ice that if you don't have the chance to really clean up right now while it's still kind of not completely frozen over, that'll be a headache to deal with for tomorrow, and many people probably would much rather deal with that of snow. But anyways, even though we're not seeing completely snow change over, areas north into Delaware, Marysville, more than likely you are seeing that snow fall. It's just that closer to the transition line to where the sleet is, a lot of this could be that of just sleet. But we will see some snow mix in more so later on into this evening. Further down to the south, you can see we kind of have this enhanced, really large swath of what is showing sleet here. You can see the indicator between sleet and freezing rain. Freezing rain is going to be closer to where we actually see rain falling. And the thing is, freezing rain and rain falls is the same thing. It's just that the surface temperatures are below freezing to where then the rain freezes on contact. And that's why for a lot of locations in Ross County earlier into the afternoon, the roads were fine, but you would look in the trees and you could see that there was ice collecting. That's because the tree is not as well insulated as the surface, and the air above it is cooling much faster. So thus, yes, the air temperature above the surface was probably below freezing, but the surface of itself on the ground was above it. But then later on in the evening, again, we saw that ice come together along the grounds, and especially those roadways, which is why more than likely that Ross County is under a level 3 snow emergency. And again, everyone that is south of Circleville, east up towards Muskingum County, you're likely dealing with that of freezing rain still in some locations. But take a look at temperatures, because we have seen a lot of changes with our numbers. Still, in New Lexington, 31 degrees, 32 in Athens. You go from New Lexington to Newark, that's a difference between sleet freezing rain to possibly sleet and just plain snow in spots. Far up to the north, though, with temperatures that are going to be well into the low 20s and upper teens like Delaware, more than likely you're dealing with that of plain snow. And you would say, well, obviously, because it's below 32 degrees. But remember, we do have an area of warm air that our recent sounding from the National Weather Service, the balloon launch, there is a warm pocket of air that's still lingering across central Ohio. And that's why we're still seeing that sleet being present. And we're actually seeing a wider variety of it, because we do have some of that mild air that's still flowing through parts of the region, especially towards the south. So still, even though we've seen some of the snow crack down with some sleet, it is going to be pretty problematic with the drifting snow and ice that we're going to be seeing. And for those that have just been dealing with snow, it's windy. We've had crews north up towards Marion, Mansfield. It looks completely different than what we're dealing with here. And that is even much different than what we're dealing with down south towards Chillicothe. So either way you slice it, if you're dealing with the just snow, ice, drifting snow, or sleet, impacts for your traveling is going to be greatly impacted. So now, again, now that we're starting to head into the early part of the night, notice now we're starting to see the radar match with what our model was indicating, which again was a large swath of likely sleet and freezing rain. So this particular model has a pretty good grasp, although you would believe that we would see more snow than sleet at this point in time. But of course, we are dealing with what is currently falling outside. I am expecting by around 11 o'clock midnight, we should see that of just plain snow here in Columbus. But notice what happens to the system. It's drifting further to the south and east. So easily we'll be seeing snow here in Columbus by around midnight, but we're starting to cut off with a lot of the moisture associated with the system because it's now drifting south and east. And because of that, we'll just see light snow heading into the morning hours on Friday, but not to say the same will be the case down in southern Ohio, where you might even still be looking at sleet and not plain snow in Athens, even though air temperatures will be close to 22 degrees by 7 o'clock. We're still going to be looking at snow impacting far southeastern parts of the state as far as accumulating snow, and even in this model run in particular, showing that the snow may linger a bit as we head into the afternoon on Friday. Before the snow will start to let off, we'll have some flurries. Winds will be driving in more out of the north. It's going to be a breezy, blustery day for us. Even though it's showing 20 degrees, it's not going to feel like it. It's going to feel like more so 10 degrees, probably during the warmest part of the day. And of course, talking about the ice on the windshield, if you haven't had the chance to take a look at that, well, you'll be in for a surprise for tomorrow. So if you want to get the job done in 5 to 15 minutes, I would say turn the defrosters on first. You know, turn your vehicle on, sit in it. Make sure that you know you're not leaving your vehicle unattended, of course, but sit in your vehicle, turn the defrosters on a little bit, let your car warm up. So that way you can kind of combat the ice that is likely caked onto your windshield, and especially as you're heading out to your vehicle, make sure you're being careful. So again, this ice accumulation graphic is something that has changed since earlier today. This was what we had put together this evening, and this is more so representing what we're going to see in totality out of this event. So this will be different by the 11 o'clock. I'll be tweaking this graphic a little bit more so we can end up what is the leftovers from this event. But again, most of the icing potential is still in southeastern Ohio, not so much here in Columbus anymore. There will be a swath near Muskingum County down towards Pickaway County and of course into Ross County where we will see that ice continue a little bit. But our snowfall totals, they are drastically impacted. So again, what I could say is, especially for areas that are in the 4 to 7 to the up to 2 inches, you basically, with the sleet that we've been seeing, you can just take off the upper part of the potential. Because again, we left a little bit more variety because sleet will have a huge impact. Very unlikely that we're going to come close to 7 inches of snow when we had 2 inches of sleet. If we had no sleet, then I would say, yeah, good chance we're probably higher to that. But more so now, you could say that especially for those south of Columbus to the east, you're going to be looking at snowfall amounts more than likely in the 2 to 4 range, especially to the south and east there, where we'll likely see up to 2 inches. But here in Columbus, we were more in that transitional period where we saw a lot more sleet than snow, which again is why there's going to be such a drastic difference in your snowfall totals across the state. And we got caught right in that, as is the case right now. We're still dealing with sleet in spots. So again, this gradient, when we look at snowfall reports going into tomorrow and what we'll be talking about over the next day or so, you're going to be amazed the difference in snow from Marion to Columbus. We just drew the short straw as far as the snowfall amounts with what the system ended up doing, but a lot of our high-resolution models did a pretty good job at depicting what was likely going to happen, and again, leaning a little bit more closer to the lower end of the totals for us. But literally earlier this week, my gut feeling was, this feels like an event where we'll see anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of snow, upwards of 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice, and sleet will be an underdog in the forecast. And again, the sleet proving to be an issue as far as any higher snowfall totals with us. But we will continue to see some light snow, so it's not all done yet. We're not throwing in the towel, of course, for you snow lovers. We got another chance for that as we head into tomorrow, but it will be much lighter. And again, not much additional accumulation, especially here in Columbus. That'll be more so for those to the south and east. And again, looking at your 7 to 10 day forecast, we are looking at temperatures that are going to be crashing down into the single digits. Before we show the 10-day, though, I want to go back to the radar and just go over quickly. Let's take a look at some cameras, actually, so we can kind of put some pen to paper here and what we're seeing. So this is over at the Scioto Audubon Metro Park, just right outside of downtown Columbus. You can see liquid on the lens there, so it doesn't really look too icy. More than likely, probably some sleet. Let's take a look at Heath and Newark. Yeah, that lens has been looking icy all evening long. Definitely looking at more ice over towards Licking County, far to the south and east. And again, tower camera really not showing much obstruction to the view out there. Nothing compared to what we saw earlier. And to put that into perspective, let's look at our current visibility right now. Because again, it's not all that bad here in town, at least, overlooking the skyline here in downtown Columbus. But as you look further to the east and to the south, so we're going to be looking at quite the difference as far as visibility for those that are under a half mile. And again, we're going to continue to see this snow gradually build in from the north and west. And we'll throw another tool up here in a second. Just have to update something real quick. And again, this radar image right here, again, you're saying, oh, Ross, that's plain snow. Not necessarily the case. So we'll show another tool here. This is called the correlation coefficient. Try to say that 3 times fast. Anyways, this looks like a lot of clutter, something you might see, on an old TV that you may have. But what we're looking at here in particular is solid colors. You want to focus on the solid colors here. So you see these dark reds. Essentially, this is representing very similar particles that are in the air. But what happens when you go from Cincinnati to Columbus? Not all the particles are all red. We're seeing yellows and greens. What this is showing here is a difference in particles. And for the type of winter weather that we're looking at, this is actually representing a changeover from snow to sleet. And that is also seen through parts of southeastern Ohio, possible over towards Athens as well. But everything looks pretty uniform here towards Hillsborough, Chillicothe, Ross County. And again, this is predominantly that of likely freezing rain. So the ice, the sleet accumulation still firing up, but this is more the transitional zone along this boundary. And again, just to highlight that, I'll draw a line here. And this is pretty much the deciding factor between that of what is snow. I apologize for my poor telestrations. That's a very bad N, by the way. That is an N, snow. And then what we have here, which is sleet. And then, of course, here is where we're looking at some of that freezing. We'll just abbreviate this. Freezing R. Freezing rain. So areas that here are currently under what is some more colors of the same, so these darker reds together, that's uniform precipitation. Up to the north here, where we're seeing the solid reds, that's uniform precipitation as well. So we're seeing this slow boundary drift to the south and east. It's just not moving all that much. And because of that, we're just still seeing much of the same. So we're continuing to see the snowfall here, which again is probably why we've seen in some of our higher resolution models, why we're seeing such a large cutoff in between the snowfall totals. Because if you think about it, again, this isn't moving. So areas here are continuing to see snow, although fairly light. These areas here are seeing primarily that of some freezing rain, and this is a mess of just a sleet mixture out there. So that does make sense, because if this isn't moving all that much, it's kind of stalled out, we are going to see drastic differences in snowfall. Not so much that, the snow is going to be heaviest to the north, it's going to be weaker here. It's just that we aren't really seeing that much snow. We're seeing more of that of sleet. So again, just a little explanation there to help, depict what we're looking at. And again, might be scratching your head after this, so trying to explain that as easy as possible. But hopefully you were able to get the gist out of it. And again, still shows snow, but clearly we're not all seeing snow at the moment. But again, that could easily change here over the next couple hours as we cool the upper parts of the atmosphere. Again, might take a little bit longer into the night, but for the time being, it certainly looks like we are going to be looking at some more light snow into the overnight hours. So again, as we take a look at the next several days, we are going to be continuing to talk about some frigid conditions. We are looking at temperatures that are going to be right around 0 degrees for us on Saturday in the morning. A lot of sunshine though, but it's going to take some time before we see all of this event kind of fade away for us or melt, because temperatures aren't going to be all that warm as we head into next week. Likely we'll see the potential for a little bit of precipitation passing through midweek. Otherwise, looks like things will be pretty dry for us, which will be good news with everything we've been dealing with. And then heading into the following weekend, that's where it looks like we could perhaps see another system come to town later on into the week. Looking at your 10-day forecast, that'll come late on into the day on Friday. And again, to put that into perspective here, looking at one of our latest model guidances has supported with this. Again, going into next week, it looks like Wednesday into Thursday, we could very well, again, this is one of our updated model runs that I'm looking at, we could see another interesting system kind of come through into the midweek going into later next week. So we'll continue to digest that information and update you. But Wednesday into Friday, kind of similar to, what we saw this week. If we can continue to see this come together, who knows, we might be dealing with another rain-snow mix event for us. So more to come on that. In the meantime, just play it safe, and if you can, just relax for the day tomorrow and be careful as you head out the door with all the ice out there. In the meantime, stay safe, take care, and